All right, thank you for having me. Good morning. Thank you for all being here and on the live stream. Thank you for your time. So I'm going to talk about the setup. So we'll start kind of from the beginning. We are not working again today. Oh, there we go. So I was an intuitive for proctor. That's my disclosure. And so really, if you can leave this talk with one thing, it's all about the team that you build. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of surgeons across the country and the world that can do these operations, but there aren't very many programs that do these, that run, run safe programs that are everlasting. And so really, if there's anything we can talk about today, it's how do we set up a team that can keep doing this even in your absence? So building an MIS liver program, so this talk also can be, this can be extrapolated to any MIS program you want to build. So if you want to build an MIS pancreas program or a liver program, whether it be robot or laparoscopic, this is really, all these things go with any of those programs and you can adapt. So I think that your first is have a foundation. So make sure your team's experienced and have good outcomes with open hepatectomy. So if you're new out of training, you probably just don't want to go run, start doing this. It's probably not the right time. Make sure you have good outcomes and you have some partners that can help you. Go talk to your administration in your hospital and make sure that they're behind you and going to give you the resources to do this. So do you have equipment? Do you have OR time? You're probably going to need more OR time. If you're on an RVU-based compensation plan, are they going to allow for some credit or something to make you whole so that you're not trying to, rush through these operations, to get your compensation appropriate and things. So make sure that the institution is behind you and going to support you in this. And commitment from your team. So you also need enough operations to get through this learning curve. So if you're doing an occasional hepatectomy, that's probably not enough to get you through this or your whole team through a learning curve. So make sure everybody's on board. So if you have several partners that all do liver operation, are you going to all feed into this MIS program so that you can get your program going and running in a safe way? So for the team, who do we need on this team? All these people are really important, and like I said, I think they're as important as the individual surgeon. So go gather up your best scrub tech, your first assistant, and make sure that you've picked them and that they are on board. They will make your life so much easier that day, right? When you show up to the operating room and all the equipment's pulled and everything's done and you're not trying to think about every single piece. You want to think about the technical details of the operation when you're doing something new. You don't need to be thinking about, oh, how long did you want that suture cut? So if you get your team pulled together at the beginning, all of those little things are easier. I think 2 attending surgeons is very helpful, or even more. So as you go through this, having another attending with you, you can bounce ideas off each other, confirm anatomy. It can just give you some confidence in staying minimally invasive. It can be really helpful. Same thing goes with your circulating nurse as far as equipment. You don't want to be thinking about, every time, you need another piece of equipment, they're running into the hallway for 20 minutes because they don't know what it is. So if you have this team build up, all your life's just a lot easier. And especially for liver, maybe more than other MIS programs, the anesthesiologist is a really important portion of this team. So I would make a good argument to find, get your liver team in order and make sure that you have a consistent anesthesiologist. They can do a lot with managing the ventilator and fluids and controlling your blood loss. So that they're a really critical portion of this team. I think having the team consistent for all the cases is really important, especially at the beginning. So if you can get your hospital or your OR staff on board, that you can have the same people every time, all of this gets easier. We took some of the team with us when we were starting to train for some of these procedures. We took some of them with us. So when we were learning and thinking about the procedure, they were concentrating and focusing on how do I set this up? What equipment do I need? And they came home with pick list and things that were all done and organized. And then when you get back home, spend some time on that pick list so that that day they know everything, it's all done and organized so that you're not thinking about these things last minute or on the day of an operation. As far as skills and training go, it's a little harder. Here's when we were doing our robot pancreas program. There you can go practice on biotissue and things and practice reconstruction, and a little bit different from your MIS liver in that it's not like you can go get a model to practice like transection of the parenchyma or something. So I think more important for liver is starting with more simple cases. So you can get your team all organized and get them accustomed to, how do I set this case up? How, what is all the equipment I need on these simple cases, so that as you progress through to more complicated cases, your team is not thinking about equipment anymore. It's just routine for you. So do simple things, cyst fenestrations, minor hepatectomies, simple non-anatomic resections that are going to be difficult. That gets your team all in order for your big cases. When you're out there still learning, do all this up front. So go see other surgeons operate. There are many surgeons that will welcome you into their operating rooms to learn. And I think it's helpful even to see a couple. You can kind of take your favorite things from them and then make your own way to do it. So go see how other people do it. I still learn every time I watch someone operate. I learn something new. So this, I think, can be really important. A cadaver lab can be nice. And then for your first cases, get a proctor. And maybe even not for your first cases, but even sometimes I think a proctor can be helpful 10 cases in, because then you've got your setup down and you're not so much thinking about the setup, but now you're thinking about technical details of an operation. And I think a proctor can be very helpful at looking at what you're doing and really helping you get through your learning curve and get more efficient and things like that. On patient selection, I think especially for liver, you need to be selective. I'll often talk about pancreas and say, I don't want to be so selective because I want to get that volume done and get us through the learning curve. But I think in liver, it really will behoove you to be selective enough. Don't do cases that you're concerned for margins or that you have technical concerns, right? Like, do a case that it's a simple right hepatectomy if that's your first major. It's not something that you're really worried about the technical details. In that patient selection, the one thing I do think, though, you can't be so selective that you're booking a case every other month, right? Because if you're doing a case every other month, your team never gets on board. And so I do think there's some middle ground of doing enough cases that everybody's on board, all the equipment is together. And if you have a conversion that's not urgent, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, and that your team needs to practice all of those skills too. So as long as you're not making an urgent conversion, that can be beneficial to your team. And thinking of that emergence, so if you're thinking about your setup, thinking about an emergency conversion is really useful, and we talked about this a lot yesterday at one of the sessions. I think early on, just have all your open things ready, right? Like, there's no reason that if you need to convert, that your scrub tech is really, frantic trying to count a new tray or something. So just have the stuff ready at the beginning. If you do need to make an emergency conversion or an urgent conversion even, think about, how urgent is this? Can I control the bleeding? And think about what I need to do. Do I have some time? And your biggest role as surgeon is communicate with the team. So you need to tell them if you're having problems. Do you need blood? You need to tell, do you need to tell the rest of the team to get equipment and things? Do you have another way out? Can you use a hand port or something else to make the situation tenable? We talked about this a little bit yesterday in this emergency conversion process. You shouldn't be thinking of this when you have to convert, right? Everybody in the room needs to know their role, so you need to communicate that decision. Everybody else needs to know what to do. So the nurse, the scrub tech, your first assistant, anesthesiologist all need to know these roles. And so I suggest practicing this with your team beforehand. You can also do a robot timeout. So do your timeout, per your institution policy, and maybe you do a robot timeout. So if we convert, this is everybody's role. You can do this in about 30 seconds and really know what everyone needs to do if you need to convert. So what we've learned, if you're doing this robot, sometimes trading off with a partner is helpful, right? If you're sitting at a console and just getting a little frustrated or fatigued, get up and change. If you're doing it laparoscopically, again, have another surgeon there. You guys can swap out if it's getting frustrating. Planning for schedules is really important. So it gets hectic, right? Everybody's got clinic and lots of ORs. And so plan ahead of time as you're getting these procedures on so that you can get enough to get through your learning curve. Keep studying. Like I said before, I always learn something. Every time I watch someone else operate, I learn something. So watch videos. You can find videos all over. And it's not just videos of liver operations. I learned something when I watch everyone else. I learned things from the urologists because they do something a little bit different. I've learned things from our thoracic surgeons when I watch them operate. So go study again. It really can make you a technically better surgeon. And like I said, a proctor, and maybe even a proctor after you've done several of them, have them come in and look at what you're doing and help you get better. And if you're struggling with any parts of these operations, hey, my ports aren't quite right, I'm struggling with a third arm, I can't figure it out, call other people. If there's no one at your institution doing this, you don't have to recreate the wheel. There are tons of people that have already created these programs. So go call your friends and ask them, you know, what they're doing. They'll help you through it. So in conclusion, MIS HPV programs can be started safely. Put your time in up front. It will really benefit you on the back end. Use the resources available. You don't need to recreate the wheel. So put in that time so you can decrease your learning curve and go use other people to help you do this right. Measure your outcomes. So this is really important for all of us in new programs to make sure that this is helpful to our patients. Like, what are our outcomes? Are we really benefiting our patients? And lastly, have fun. Like, I think especially if you're learning this skill after you've been in practice several years, it can be a lot of fun to learn something new. So really enjoy the process. I think it can be really rewarding. So thank you for your time.